Velshara had been working in the Galactic Council archives for 73 cycles. In all that time, she had never found anything that truly scared her. Today was different. The Coathian archivist's 4 eyes focused on the screen before her, trying to make sense of what she was seeing. She had been cataloging old Earth transmissions, the ones from before first contact. It was boring work, usually. Humans sent out so much noise into space: music, art, mathematical formulas, declarations about peace and universal rights. But these files were different. They had been buried deep in the archive system, marked as low priority. Someone had decided they weren't important enough to review properly. That someone had been wrong. Velshara's breathing membranes fluttered rapidly as she watched footage from something humans called World War II. The numbers didn't make sense at first. 70 million dead. Entire cities destroyed in single nights. Weapons that burned hotter than stars dropped from the sky. She paused the recording and checked the date. This wasn't ancient history by human standards. This had happened less than 400 years ago. 400 years. Her own species had been peaceful for 10,000 cycles. What kind of species slaughtered itself on such a scale so recently? The next file was worse. It showed something called a nuclear test. Velshara watched as humans deliberately created an explosion powerful enough to destroy a city. Then she read the report. They hadn't created one of these weapons. They had created tens of thousands. By the void, she whispered, using a curse she hadn't spoken since childhood. She dug deeper. Every file revealed something new and horrifying. Humans had driven hundreds of species to extinction on their own planet. Not for survival, for convenience, for space. Sometimes just for sport. They had taken wolves, massive predators with powerful jaws, and turned them into pets through something called selective breeding. They reshaped other species to suit their needs. The documents used cheerful words like domestication, but Velshara understood what she was reading. Humans had bent nature itself to their will. The warfare records were extensive. Humans had been fighting each other for their entire history. 200,000 years of increasingly sophisticated violence. They had created weapons specifically designed to cause maximum suffering. Poison gas, biological plagues, bombs that released radiation. But what disturbed Velshara most was how they wrote about it. Human historians documented their own atrocities with cold precision. They studied their wars. They analyzed their mistakes. They built museums dedicated to their worst moments, forcing each new generation to confront what their species had done. Why would anyone do that? Why remember such horrors? She found a partial answer in a speech by a human leader from the 20th century. Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. The words chilled her. Humans weren't ashamed of their history. They were studying it, learning from it. Velshara straightened in her chair, her tail twitching nervously. The Galactic Council needed to know about this. When humans had joined the Council 300 years ago, they had presented themselves as a peaceful species. Their representatives spoke eloquently about cooperation and mutual understanding. Their art and music showed sensitivity and depth, but no one had asked the right questions. No one had looked deep enough into what humans had been before first contact. She began compiling her findings into a report. The evidence was overwhelming. Humans were far more dangerous than anyone had realized. Not because they were aggressive now, but because they had the capacity for such incredible violence and had somehow chosen to suppress it. That worried her more than anything. A species that was naturally violent was predictable. But a species that chose peace while retaining the knowledge and ability to wage total war, that was something else entirely. Velshara worked through the night cycle, her report growing longer with each passing hour. She included footage, statistics, historical records. Everything she could find about humanity's true nature. By morning, she had requested an emergency session with the Council's Historical Committee. They would need to see this. They would need to understand what humanity really was. Her terminal chimed with an incoming message. It was from the Frontier News Service. She almost ignored it, too focused on her work. But something about the headline caught her attention. Human colony on Kepler 442b goes silent after hostile contact. Valshara's membranes went still. She opened the full report. A species called the Vrex Collective had attacked the human colony. It was a small settlement, mostly civilians. Farmers and miners. The Vrex were known raiders, species that preyed on frontier worlds. They had done this dozens of times to other species. The pattern was always the same. Attack, take hostages, demand ransom. Sometimes they got paid. Sometimes they didn't. Either way, they usually killed most of the captives. The Vrex had picked a human colony. Based on everything Valshara had just learned, that seemed like a terrible mistake. She added the news report to her presentation and marked it urgent. The Council needed to understand what humans were capable of before this situation escalated. But as she finalized her request for an emergency session, a small part of her wondered if it was already too late. The Vrex had no idea what they had done. They saw humans as just another soft species of the core worlds. Peaceful, diplomatic, easy prey. Valshara looked at the footage on her screen. Cities burning. Mushroom clouds rising. Humans fighting humans with terrible efficiency. She thought about the Vrex raiders holding civilians hostage and felt something she rarely experienced. Pity. Not for the humans. For the Vrex, they had no idea what was coming for them. The council chamber was half empty when Valshara arrived. She had called for an emergency session, but most representatives had dismissed it as unimportant. After all, humans had been model citizens for 3 centuries. What could possibly be urgent about reviewing their ancient history? Only 12 representatives had bothered to attend. The Qualathian archivist stood at the central podium, her presentation materials loaded and ready. She could feel their impatience. They wanted this over quickly. "Thank you for coming," she began, her voice steady despite her nervousness. "I have discovered information about humanity that the Council needs to see. Information that was overlooked during first contact." A Leshan representative waved a tentacle dismissively. "We know humans had wars in their past. Most species did. Why waste our time with this?" "Because you don't understand the scale," Valshara said. She activated the display. "This is footage from Earth, approximately 350 years ago." The chamber fell silent as images filled the holographic display. Cities in flames. Massive armies clashing. Weapons that turned battlefields into wastelands. In a 6-year period, humans killed 70 million of their own kind, Valshara said. That's more deaths than the entire population of 15 council species combined. She showed them the nuclear tests, the footage of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the Cold War arsenals that could have ended all life on Earth dozens of times over. They created these weapons before they had interstellar travel, she continued. They nearly destroyed themselves. And they did it while knowing exactly what would happen. The representatives were paying attention now. Valshara showed them more. The extinction events. The domestication of predators. The way humans had reshaped entire ecosystems to suit their needs. They hunted prey by chasing it for days until it collapsed from exhaustion, she explained. They're pursuit predators. No other sapient species hunts this way. They simply outlast everything else. A Morvian representative shifted uncomfortably. This is disturbing, archivist, but it's history. Humans have been peaceful for centuries. They've contributed greatly to council science and culture. Have they? Valshara asked. She pulled up medical records. Human medicine is the most advanced in the galaxy. Do you know why? They learned to save lives by becoming experts at taking them. Every major medical breakthrough came during or after their wars. Trauma surgery, antibiotics, reconstructive procedures. They learned to heal because they were so good at harming. She showed them human philosophy. They created international law after witnessing industrial-scale slaughter. They formed their world government after nearly destroying themselves. Every human achievement exists as a response to their own capacity for horror. What exactly are you suggesting? The Deshan asked. I'm suggesting we don't understand what humans are, Velshara said. We accepted them as peaceful because they acted peaceful. But they're not naturally peaceful. They chose it. They're still capable of incredible violence. They've just decided not to use it. Isn't that admirable? Another representative asked. It's terrifying, Velshara replied, because choice can be unmade. Before she could continue, an alarm sounded throughout the chamber. An emergency priority message was coming through from the frontier. The chamber's main display activated automatically, overriding Velshara's presentation. A human face appeared. Male, middle-aged, with cold eyes that reminded Velshara of the soldiers in the historical footage she'd been reviewing. He wore a civilian uniform, but something about his bearing suggested military training. This is Director Chun of Kepler 442b Colony, the human said, his voice eerily calm. We are currently under hostile occupation by Rex collective forces. They have taken 372 civilians hostage, including children. The council representative shifted nervously. This was standard Rex behavior. Unpleasant, but not unusual. I am transmitting this message directly to the Rex command ship, Chun continued. You have 12 hours to release all hostages unharmed and leave this system. If you do not, we will consider this an act of war against humanity. A harsh, clicking laugh came through the channel. A Rex voice, translated by the system, responded mockingly. You are farmers and miners. We have read your Earth records. You are a peaceful species. You will negotiate, and we will profit. This is how it always goes. You've read the wrong records, Chun said, still calm. You have 12 hours. I strongly suggest you use them wisely. The transmission ended. The council chamber erupted in discussion. The Deshan representative turned to Velshara. Will humans actually fight? After 3 centuries of peace? Velshara thought about everything she'd learned. The wars, the weapons, the cold efficiency with which humans had once slaughtered each other. She thought about how they'd stopped, how they built a peaceful civilization. And she thought about what would happen if someone forced them to choose between their principles and their survival. Yes, she said quietly. They'll fight. And the Vrex have no idea what they've done. Far above the council chambers, in high orbit, 3 human ships waited in the dark. Their names were printed in simple text on their hulls. Verdun, Thermopylae, and Iwo Jima. They were old ships, retrofitted colonial defense vessels. Pre-contact designs that have been carefully maintained and updated. No one in the council knew about them. Humans had been peaceful for 300 years, but they had never been unprepared. The 12 hours began counting down. The Vrex commander was not concerned. His name was unpronounceable to most species, a series of clicks and hisses that translated roughly as Ravager. He had raided 43 frontier worlds in his career, 30 different species. All had surrendered. Humans would be no different. He walked through the captured colony's main hall, his armored boots echoing on the metal floor. The human hostages sat in organized groups, quiet and watchful. That was unusual. Most species panicked. They cried. They begged. These humans just watched him with calculating eyes. Your people will pay the ransom. Ravager clicked to the nearest human. An older woman with gray hair. They always do. No, the woman said simply. They won't. Then you will die. Probably, she agreed. But so will you. Ravager laughed. These soft creatures were trying to seem brave. It was almost amusing. He had reviewed Earth's official records. Humans were diplomats, artists, scientists. They had no significant military. They had joined the Galactic Council 300 years ago and never fought a single war. What he didn't know was that every human colony had mandatory civil defense training. What he didn't know was that the farmers and miners he had captured included veterans of the Colonial Guard. What he didn't know was that humans had very specific protocols for hostage situations. Protocols developed over centuries of dealing with their own violent history. In the colony's maintenance tunnels, Chun worked quickly. He had been a soldier before he became a colony director. So had most of his administrative staff. Humans learned long ago that peace was maintained by those willing and able to fight for it. Communications are still down, his second-in-command reported. A young woman named Torres, who had served 3 tours as a combat medic. But we got the message out before the wrecks jammed us. Good, Chun said. He was assembling something from spare parts and mining explosives. Not a sophisticated weapon, but it didn't need to be. How many wrecks in the main hall? 20 guards. Maybe 50 more spread throughout the colony. Chun nodded. The hostages outnumbered the guards 15-1. The wrecks thought numbers didn't matter when they had weapons and armor. They had never fought humans before. 7 hours until the deadline, Torres said. Will our people really come? Yes, Chun said simply. He had no doubt. Humans have many laws, but one stood above all others, written after their worst wars. Never abandon your people. Never negotiate with hostage takers. Never show weakness to predators. The wrecks had broken all 3 rules. In space, the waiting ships received their orders. Not from the Council. Not from Earth. From the Colonial Defense Network, a system humans had quietly maintained for 3 centuries. Just in case. Captain Morrison stood on the bridge of the Verdun, reading the intelligence report on the wrecks. 43 successful raids. Thousands killed. They operated with impunity because the Council preferred negotiation to conflict. What are the rules of engagement? Our first officer asked. Morrison looked at the report one more time, then at the data on human hostages. 372 people, including 41 children. She thought about the wreck's commander who thought humans were soft. Who thought 300 years of peace meant 300 years of weakness. Total engagement, she said quietly. No survivors among combatants. Hostage rescue is priority 1. Everything else is secondary. The first officer hesitated. That's extermination, Captain. Yes, Morrison agreed. It is. She activated the fleet-wide channel. All ships, this is Verdun. We are going to rescue our people. The Rex Collective thinks we're peaceful because we haven't had to fight in 3 centuries. They think we've forgotten how. Show them they're wrong. The 3 ships moved toward Kepler-4 42b. They didn't rush. They took their time, calculating trajectories, running simulations. Humans were good at planning. They'd had a lot of practice. The 12 hours elapsed. Ravager stood in the colony's control center, waiting for the inevitable message. The negotiation. The ransom demand. The capitulation. Instead, his sensors registered 3 ships entering orbit. Small ones. Colonial defense vessels. He laughed. What did they think they could accomplish? Attention Rex forces. A human voice came through all channels. This is Captain Morrison of the Colonial Defense Ship Verdun. You were warned. You did not listen. All hostages will be recovered. You will not leave this system. You dare threaten us? Ravager clicked back. We have your people. We will kill them if you attack. There was a pause. Then Morrison's voice came back, colder now. You're going to kill them anyway. That's what you do. We've studied your pattern. So we're not negotiating. We're extracting our people. And then we're eliminating the threat. You're bluffing. You're a peaceful species. We were never peaceful, Morrison said. We were just patient. There's a difference. The wreck ships in orbit moved to intercept the human vessels. They were larger, better armed. They had numerical superiority. On paper, they should have won easily. They lasted 9 minutes. Human ships moved with precision that spoke of endless practice. Their weapons were old designs, but maintained to perfection and upgraded with 3 centuries of new technology. They didn't fight like the wrecks expected. They didn't try to disable or wound. They targeted critical systems with surgical accuracy, then finished the job. Velshara watched from the Council observation deck, her membranes frozen in shock. The battle, if it could be called that, was the most efficient display of violence she had ever witnessed. Humans fought like they did everything else, with careful planning, perfect execution, and absolutely no hesitation. By the void, the Dishan representative whispered, "What are they?" "What they've always been," Velshara said quietly. "We just forgot to look." On the colony surface, Chun and his people moved the moment the orbital battle began. The wreck's guards were distracted, looking up at the sky. They never saw the colonists coming. The rescue took 37 minutes. Not a single hostage was killed. Every wreck soldier in the colony was neutralized. Chun had been a soldier once, and soldiers knew how to do one thing very well. When it was over, the 3 human ships systematically hunted down every wreck's vessel that had been part of the raid. Not one escaped. Not one was allowed to surrender. Ravager's last thought was confusion. These were supposed to be peaceful creatures. But the humans boarding his ship moved with the efficiency of apex predators. They knew exactly what they were doing. They'd always known. The news spread across the galaxy within hours. The Vrex Collective had attacked a human colony. The Vrex Collective had ceased to exist. Velshara sat in her archive office, watching reports flood in from every corner of Council space. The reaction was divided. Some species expressed horror at humanity's ruthless efficiency. Others felt relief, quietly grateful that someone had finally dealt with the Vrex problem. But everyone was asking the same question. What exactly were humans? The Council called an emergency full session. Every representative attended this time. Captain Morrison was summoned to explain humanity's actions. She stood at the central podium in her uniform, calm and professional. "You committed extermination," the Deshan representative accused. "You hunted down every single wreck ship involved in the raid. You gave them no quarter." "We did," Morrison agreed. "We studied their history. 43 raids. Thousands killed. They never left witnesses when they didn't get paid. We assessed that negotiation was futile and rescue was the only option. You could have shown mercy after rescuing your people." "Could we?" Morrison asked. "If we had shown mercy, what message does that send? That humans can be attacked with impunity as long as you eventually let the hostages go?" That seemed like a poor precedent to set. A Morvian representative leaned forward. "You've been peaceful for 300 years. How can you justify such violence now?" Morrison was quiet for a moment. "We've been peaceful because we chose to be. Because we built systems and laws and agreements to avoid conflict. But we never pretended that choice couldn't be unmade if necessary. The Vrex attacked our people. They left us no options." "There are always options," the Dishan insisted. "Are there?" Morrison looked around the chamber. "How many species has the Council negotiated with after they raided your worlds? How many times have you paid ransoms? How many families have you told that their loved ones died because it was more convenient to negotiate than to fight. The chamber fell silent. Humans learned something long ago, Morrison continued. Peace maintained through weakness isn't peace. It's just waiting for someone stronger to come along. Peace requires the ability to defend it. Sometimes it requires the willingness to fight for it. Velshara stood from her observation seat. Captain Morrison is correct, she said. I spent weeks studying human history. Do you know what I found? Humans have been fighting their own instincts for 200,000 years. They are pursuit predators who developed intelligence. Apex predators who gained the ability to create tools and strategies. She activated her presentation, showing the footage she'd compiled. They fought each other for millennia. They created weapons capable of destroying their own planet. They drove species to extinction. They reshaped entire ecosystems to suit their needs. They were never innocent. The images shifted to show human philosophy, art, and law. But they learned. They studied their own violence and decided to transcend it. They created international law after witnessing industrial slaughter. They formed a world government after nearly destroying themselves. They built their entire modern civilization as a rejection of what they could be. Then why did they return to violence now? Someone asked. They didn't return to violence, Velshara said. They never left it. They just stored it away, ready to use if needed. That's what makes them terrifying. They're not naturally peaceful. They're choosing peace while retaining the capacity for war. Morrison nodded slowly. That's accurate. We're not saints. We're not innocents. We're predators who decided to be something better. But we remember what we are. We remember what we're capable of. And when someone threatens our people, we remember very clearly. The council deliberated for 3 days. In the end, they voted to keep humanity as a member species. But the relationship had changed. The mask had slipped. Everyone now understood what humans truly were. Velshara received an invitation to visit Earth. She accepted, curious to see the human homeworld now that she understood its history. She met with a human historian, an elderly woman named Dr. Sarah Chun, in a museum dedicated to human warfare. They walked through halls filled with weapons and battle records. Evidence of humanity's violent past, preserved and displayed for all to see. Why do you keep these? Velshara asked. Why remind yourselves? Because forgetting would be dangerous, Dr. Chun said. We need to remember what we're capable of. We need to teach each generation about our mistakes so they don't repeat them. Were you ever innocent? Velshara asked the question that had been haunting her. Dr. Chen smiled sadly. No, we were never innocent. We were apex predators who gained intelligence and wondered what to do with it. We committed every horror imaginable. To animals, to our planet, to each other. She paused at a display showing the ruins of Hiroshima. But we learned. We chose to be better. That's not innocence. That's harder than innocence. That's redemption. And that's why you're terrifying, Velshara said softly. Perhaps, Dr. Chan agreed. But it's also why you can trust us. We know what we are. We've made our choice. We'll defend that choice with everything we have. But we won't become what we were unless we absolutely must. Velshara returned to the council and filed her final report. It became required reading for all diplomatic staff. The conclusion was simple. Humanity was the only species to domesticate itself. They were dangerous, not because they were violent. Many species were violent. They were dangerous because they understood violence so completely that they chose to transcend it while keeping the capacity in reserve. They were proof that the most terrifying predator was one that chose mercy. Across the galaxy, species quietly updated their assessments of humanity. Military analysts revised their threat evaluations. Diplomatic protocols were changed. Next to humanity, in every major database, The same notes appeared. Status: peaceful. Threat level: apocalyptic. Recommendation: keep them that way, and in the darkness between stars. The raiders and predators who once prowled the frontier routes began to avoid systems marked with a small blue flag and the words "Human Protected Territory." They had learned what the galaxy was still learning. Humans were terrifying not because they were never innocent. They were terrifying because they remembered exactly what they had been, chose to be something better, and retained the capacity to become monsters again if they must. The choice was theirs. And that made all the difference.